Welcome to the Shaping Champions podcast, a platform for discussion and exploration into what it takes to be a champion in life. We speak to athletes, entertainers, business people, and everyone in between about their journey and experiences, discovering the key ingredients needed to become successful at whatever it is you do. Please do subscribe to us at wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Shaping Champions Podcast. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Shaping Champions podcast, where we talk to professionals across various fields and discuss what it takes to shape present and future champions. I'm riding solo this week. I do not have my esteemed co-host Mash St. Patrick Hewitt with me, but nevertheless, it's going to be a great one. I'm very excited about today's guest, a man who would be equally comfortable holding a pen in one hand and having a boxing glove on his other fist. He is the current Commonwealth light flyweight champion. Delighted to welcome to the podcast, Matt Windle. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, mate. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks, bro. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today. Really, really grateful of your time. So, first of all, Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question that we ask all of our guests to kick things off. What does it mean to you to be a champion?
It's a broad question, isn't it? It's big. I mean, of course, you could just be like a champion of in life and champion in sort of certain charities or goals or things that you want to do in the community and stuff. If I'm talking specifically for me within the sports aspects of my life, being a champion, being the Commonwealth champion, it's a representation of my life's hard work. You know, everything that I've put into boxing. I've been doing it for 18 years now, so it's over half of my life and the whole of my adult life, and I've sacrificed so much in the pursuit of obtaining a championship title. So it's a representation of all the hard work that you've put in over X amount of years.
Okay, so I'm going to flip this on its head a little bit right from the start. I imagine we'd be kind of expected to talk about this a little bit later in the podcast, go through things chronologically. But as you've touched on it there, how did it feel then to reach the peak of that mountain, the one that you'd been aiming to climb for such a long time?
Yeah, it was ineffable, really. I couldn't really put it into words. The thing that meant the most to me was just seeing how much it meant to my family, my coach, and of course my friends that had come up to support me and people that were supporting me back home and stuff as well. But to see my big brother with tears in his eyes, and to have my head coach, Spencer McCracken, who, you know, he's kind of few and far between with the words that he says and stuff, for him to be giving me like a big hug and saying, I love you, kid, you know, I love you, and that sort of stuff. They're the things that really kind of stick with me. So yeah, it was great. But then, of course, when you're an active sports person of any sort, it's like, okay, that's amazing. What's next? So you're always straight onto you can't just sit around patting yourself on the back, eating tubs of ice cream, getting fat for too long, you know, because you know you're going to be expected to get to it. But I'd had so many decisions throughout my amateur career and also my professional career where I felt that I'd won the fight. I had one amateur opponent years ago who got the win over me, and he actually turned around to me in the ring and he said, tell people you won that. He said, because I didn't win. He said, so tell your mates and stuff that weren't here that you won that fight. Like, every boxer will tell you that they've had fights that they thought they won or decisions go against them or whatever, but honestly, I've really had it like tough in that sense, and I've had my resilience tested to the absolute limits. So that's why prior to winning the title, that's what it was as much for me. I said, I have to win this to make everything make sense. So my last fight before lockdown was for the Midland title, and I fought twice in 2019 for the Midland title against two different boxers. Thought I won the first one. I dropped in with the left hook in the second round. I didn't get the decision. Everyone thought that I did enough, and then the board ordered a rematch. He then vacated the title instead and moved up a weight division. So I fought somebody else for it again. Felt that I did more than enough to win. Lost by a point. And I remember saying to Spencer after the fight, "What's the point, Spence? Like, all this hard work that we're doing, what's the point?" And he said, "Well, don't make any rash decisions." I said, "No, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to quit. It's not in my DNA. That's not even, but rhetorically even, what's the point? We're doing all this graft, all this dieting, all this sacrifice, and I'm just not getting it." And this was in the flyweight division. Then lockdown happened. You're bored. We're all just preoccupying ourselves and filling time. And I started looking through different like boxing councils, so the European Boxing Union and the Commonwealth and the British rankings and all that sort of stuff. And I noticed that all of the Commonwealth titles had champions apart from the light flyweight division. Okay. And then there was, I always try and keep up to date somewhat with people that are in my weight division, because you never know when your paths could cross, whether it's sparring, whether it's a fight, whatever it might be. So I remember reading about this young Scottish prospect, unbeaten, who was on the Scotland squad and internationals and stuff as an amateur. And he said in one of his interviews that I read during lockdown, I could do light flyweight, but that weight division doesn't exist in the country, so I'm competing at flyweight. I remember thinking, he said he could do light flyweight. So the flyweight limit is 8 stone. The light flyweight limit is 7 stone 10. So you've got to be under that, basically. 4 pounds of that weight is a big jump. You know, you might think it's not much, but if we could all keep losing 4 pounds, we'd all be like flyweight. You get to a point where you can't lose 4 pounds anymore. You just physically can't do it. But for one of my 8 stone title fights, I weighed in, not on purpose, it just was what it was. I weighed in at 7 stone 12. So I was 2 pounds under that limit. And I thought, if you come in 2 pounds under the weight limit, that's not your weight, that's not your division. So then I thought, I've only got, it's not 4 pounds I've got to lose then. It's 2 pounds I've got to lose from the lowest I've ever weighed. So I thought, if I've done 7 stone 12 trying to do 8 stone, surely I could do 7'10" or 7'9" and 10 ounces or whatever if I'm trying to do 7'10". So I made a phone call to my manager and said, "What about this for the Commonwealth title? And I know I'm coming off a loss, but we'll build up the Scottish kid and he's unbeaten and we'll try and make it all out for him. His manager is such and such." So then, I know so-and-so from way back. And so, picks up the phone and that's how it all kind of started. So that's what took me to the light flyweight division. So had I have won the Midland titles at flyweight, I potentially would have been entangled in that flyweight web and maybe wouldn't have got past the Midlands area championship, which still would have been a fantastic achievement, but obviously the Commonwealth is so much bigger. So I was like, I have to win this to make everything make sense. When I look back on any fight of mine from my very, very first fight in 2006, when I thought I won and I lost 2 judges to 1, and everyone in there thought I did enough to get it. So from that fight to my most recent professional fight, I was like, I can look back through any fight in total now. What have I had, amateur and pro? I think I've had 64, so I've had 78 fights in total. So I could go through from 1 to 78 on any of those fights, and any of the ones that were a bit iffy that didn't go my way, I could say, I was supposed to lose that. I was supposed to lose it because it's testing my resilience. It was seeing how much I wanted it. It was each time then I'd lose at featherweight, and then I'd be at bantamweight, and then eventually I'd come down to flyweight, and then I had a dodgy loss at flyweight, which made me move down to light flyweight. And you just keep coming down. And I was like, I win this, everything else makes sense, and none of those dodgy decisions matter. No, I don't care. I could have had 78 fights and lost 77 of them. If the one that I won was for the Commonwealth Championship, I don't care. So I was like, I have to make it make sense. So that's what I did. I just trained. It took up the whole year, because at first we were told we was going to fight in March. Then it was like May. Then they said July. Then it was August. Then it was September. Then it was supposed to be in September, but it was when the Queen died and all sport got cancelled on the Friday. So then it got moved to October. So it was literally the whole year that I was training for, dieting, up at 5:20 to do my morning run before work 9 to 5, in the gym then, 5:30 till, whatever, 7:30, 8 o'clock. You're home, cooking, drying clothes, all that sort of stuff. Alarms going off at 5:20 again the next morning. So I was like, I just have to. I just have to win this. And thankfully I did. So then you've got that safety net then if you go, right, the worst it gets for me now is I was the Commonwealth champion. And the Commonwealth Games reminded everybody just how big of a deal the Commonwealth is. So it's a really, really big thing. It's a third of the world or whatever it is. So it's like, I'd done that. I'm the first British fighter in its 23-year history to win the light flyweight Commonwealth title. I'm the first Commonwealth fighter this century to win the light flyweight title. And by doing so, I became Britain's lightest champion. So we also got to make a little bit of history along the way, which in the greater scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything to anybody else. But to me, I've got to do things that no other British fighter has done. And we're probably, certainly pound for pound, the best country, the best nation in the world at boxing. When you look at us amateur and pros, what we do at the Olympics, the number of world champions that we have, we're a superb country. So for little me in South Birmingham to do something that no British fighter has ever done, that was a hugely proud moment for me,
Amazing achievement, absolutely incredible. I mean, what it brings up for me, a few things. Firstly, how did it change your approach? When you say you took on that mindset of, I've got to win this, did it change your approach in any way to the fight, leading up to it, the build-up and how you approached it? And also, did it make the victory more, even sweeter, like everything you just discussed?
Yeah, the victory is definitely sweeter. You sort of bask in it a little bit more, I think. Approach-wise, I've always trained diligently. I've always trained hard. One of my first ever coaches, Gordon Young from Worley, when I was boxing there, he used to say to me, most lads, certainly early on in the amateurs, they might be tall for the weight and rangy and all the rest of it. He says they could box at 70-80% and still be skillful enough to win on points. He said, you're going to have to be 100% every time you box just to stand a chance of winning. So you've got to be fit. So him saying that to me early on, I can't remember at the time if that was either before my first fight, but it was certainly a handful or less, 5 or less fights. So that was like, right, okay, well, obviously you want to win. Any sport, any game you ever play, you want to win it. That's why you're doing it. And when you're getting punched in the face, you don't want to be getting in the ring and not be winning. So I was like, right, okay, if I've got to be 100%, if my fitness has got to be, I've got to train hard. So I've always trained diligently. But I think what it did was I put additional pressure onto myself. And I box better with a bit of pressure. When I know there's kind of a safety net, I don't box quite the same way. When you read or hear of things on the news, like a mum stopped a rolling car with her bare hands because it was about to drive over a baby, and so she managed to just do some superhuman strength because the pressure was on there. If you asked her just to stop a car, she won't be able to. But when the pressure's on, she could. So I need that little bit of fear and pressure to be able to to do that. So I kind of invited that pressure onto myself. And then it's just that, your alarm goes off early in the morning. You don't want to go for a run. It's freezing. It's pouring down a rain. All these reasons and excuses that people use for why they don't do it on that morning or after work or whatever it might be. I had to say, well, how bad do you want it? Do you want it, or do you just like the idea of it? Because that's the thing, most of the time people get it confused. They think they want something and they don't really. They just like the idea of it, but they don't really want it because they'd put the graft in if they did want it. I'd love to be able to speak Spanish, but I'm not going to come home every day and rehearse and revise my Spanish. Do you know what I mean? I'd just love to wake up one day and I can speak Spanish. It's like, I like the idea of it, but the graft I'd have to put in to actually learn it. At the moment, I'm just not prepared to do that. So I didn't like the idea of being the champion. I wanted it. I did, so it just made me, that pressure made me get up out of bed, not care about the weather temperatures and just do what I need to do.
Brilliant. And how do you get that balance right? So I imagine if people put too much pressure on themselves, they can crumble. How do you maintain the right level of pressure without kind of getting in your own head and making too much of a thing of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know a lot of people nowadays will talk about balance with things. I mean, I'm not a big star sign fan or anything like that, but I'm a Libra, so I'm the scales. I'm all about balance and boxing and poetry.
Your symbol is
that's it.
Like
he's the balance.
Scales,
yeah, so like I say, I've got the boxing and the poetry, and that kind of balances me out, the yin and the yang and that sort of stuff. But I don't know if there was a balance as such. For me, it was just about being real and honest with myself, and I was just like, I need to win this. That's all it was. It wasn't that I was putting pressure on myself in the sense of I was saying, if I don't win, I'm a really poor fighter, or if I don't win, I'm going to retire. Or it wasn't necessarily anything like that. There wasn't like a punishment that I was giving myself if I didn't win, but I was like, I've just got to win. It's just like losing wasn't an option. And I know you could think, well, why don't you go through every fight like that? But of course you can't, because it's different, and sometimes you do know that there's a bit of a safety net underneath you, or it isn't the end if you were to lose or whatever. But with this one, I was just like, I just can't. I cannot lose. It'd be like the house on fire and your most prized possession, or you're the most loved person in the world is in there, and someone's saying, don't go in and try and save them. You're going in, do you know what I mean? You're going in, you're wrapping yourself in a blanket or something, and you're going in and you're trying. You're not thinking about the pressure of it or what's going to happen to you negatively, or you're just going in. So it was the same. I wasn't even trying to get a balance or anything like that. And for my life, as that was taking place, there was no balance, because like I said to you, I was up at 5:20 to train, working 9 to 5 in the gym for 5, 6, not out of there till 7, 8. You've got to eat and stuff, and then you're repeating it all again tomorrow. So people say to me, how do you have a social life? I don't. I'm single, I live alone. You know what I mean? I speak to my mates through text, and I don't have that balance, but it's because I had a goal of what I wanted, and so balance kind of had to somewhat go out the window. And then I had a nice Christmas, and January, February comes, and you're back to the grindstone, ready for the next fight.
I think you've completely epitomised being dedicated to something in what you've just said. Like laser-like focused towards achieving something. But give us an insight into, because it sounds like you were so motivated for this fight. Give us an insight into how you felt when you stepped into the ring, because obviously you're saying, I'm not losing this fight regardless. But there's another guy on the other side of the ring who's probably thinking something similar. Yeah. So how did you feel in that moment, and how did you control what was going on?
I uploaded a video onto like my Instagram and stuff of the introductions, and you just see me like bouncing in the corner, and they're introducing him, And then they introduced me, and I've got kind of my vex face on, and I separate it like talking to you now, and 99% of the time, I'm Matt Windle poet. Really, even when I'm at the boxing gym and that sort of stuff, I'm still kind of Matt Windle poet. I try to be nice and get on with people and that sort of stuff. And then in the ring, as mad as it might sound to people or whatever, they're like, I'm Matt Man. You know what I mean? That's where I'm just like game face on. I get like this death stare, and I'm just on it. I'm just up for it. I'm just ready to go. And I'm not sure if he did or if he didn't, but on that video you can read my lips. I thought, as I was like jumping up and down and looking at him, I thought I've read his lips say, "Let's go." And you see, if you could just read my lips and you see me like jumping up and down on the spot, and I go, "Yeah, let's go." And like, I'm just so on it. And I suppose the only other way that I can explain it for people to get quite a clear understanding of it is if you've ever watched the films where they're like all a bunch of hooligans and stuff, and they're standing opposite each other, and they're all kind of mouthing off at each other before they all go running into each other and start having a fight. Obviously, this is a legal and more controlled and trained and less alcohol fueled version of it, but it's that anticipation, like in 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever, everybody's gonna get out of the ring, and it's just me and him, and we're just gonna be able to knock bells out of each other, which will sound crazy to some people, I understand. And it's crazy when I watch it, when I'm live and I watch boxing. I think this is mad. This is a crazy sport that we choose. But when I'm in there and in that moment, it's like there's to me again the scales thing. It's like there's two of me, and that's just you. Yeah, when we do the face off and stuff, I just try and think of the most like horrible illegal things in the hope that it's just going to come through my eyes and just scare him. I just try and be like as mean as possible. I think I've got a fairly kind of friendly looking face. I'm only a little dot and whatever, so I'm not the most intimidating presence. I'm not Mike Tyson or anything, but on fight night, I think you'd look at me, and however big you was, you'd think, oh, I'm going to be in for an hard night. Yeah. I'm going to be in for a hard night. One of my little mantras is, you might beat me, but you'll have to bleed to do it. And I've got that sort of mentality. I'm not Floyd Mayweather. I'm not unbeatable or anything like that. But I'm going to give you all I got. And if you're not ready, if you've cut any corners, if you're not on your game, I'm gonna beat you. So prior to that fight, and the ironic thing was, we knew nothing about him. There was no footage. We didn't know if he was orthodox, southpaw, tall, short. We didn't know a thing about aggressive back foot boxer. I didn't know how to pronounce his name. His name was Sifelele Maeza, so I didn't even know how to correctly pronounce his name. No, because he was from he translate in English to the land of the Zulus in South Africa. So we know a thing or two about Zulus, right there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was I knew nothing about him, so he could have just been an absolute sensation. But on that night, at that weight, no one was beating me.
No one was coming close. No. And that was one for all the Birmingham City fans out there. For anyone who didn't get that connection, he was coming to bring it to a Zulu, in essence, wasn't he? You know what I mean? It was from one Zulu to another. So what I find fascinating, Matt, is you're in the ring. The fuse has been lit. Essentially, it sounds like what you're saying. The fuse has been lit, and something's about to go bang. I'm guessing the adrenaline's pumping. You're in a heightened state of awareness and all that sort of stuff. Have you always been able to control that, or when you first started boxing, did it take some getting used to, and did you have to implement some techniques in order to sort of control everything that's going on in that moment?
I've not always been able to control it, and that's what got me into boxing because I got permanently excluded from mainstream school. A few different factors. One, talking too much, arguing with teachers, Jack the lad, class clown, that sort of stuff. The other thing was for fighting and being kind of a boisterous lad. And the final thing was I had a bit of a reputation. Certain teachers took a disliking to me. So if I was anywhere near something that happened, I got the blame for it. So there's kind of 2/3 of the things there that I did wrong and rightfully got in trouble for, and the final third that it wasn't me that did wrong, but I still got in trouble for it anyway. You know, I mean, I remember once I got into I got a warning 5, which is like suspension and sent home and that sort of stuff. At break time, so people probably never even normally get a warning 5 throughout their whole school life. I got it at break time for refusing to pick up a piece of litter that the teacher knew wasn't mine. Right, so I hate dropping litter and stuff. I've never done it from a nipper. I've just never done it. I've always put my rubbish in the bin. My mum has I mean, obviously both my parents, but my dad's always like kind of worked 6 days a week and stuff. So I grew up largely with my mum, and she's just always drilled it into me. Rubbish goes in the bin. A lad dropped some litter on the floor. A teacher come over. Matt, pick that litter up, put it in the bin. I said, I didn't drop it, miss. I'm not saying you dropped it, but I want you to pick it up, put it in the bin. I was like, no. Warning 1, pick the litter up. No, you give me a 1 in 1,000, I'm not picking up that litter. And you think at the time I'm 13, maybe 14, something like that. But to be honest, I don't think I'd handle the situation a great deal different. And maybe I would pick it up and still give verbals as well. I don't know, but I was just like, no, warning 2, pick it. No, you know, I got like warning 5 and then loads of trouble and you know what I mean. So there was stuff like that. But from the fighting perspective, I wasn't a bad lad, but I was just like your typical teenage lad, sporty, fancied all the girls, got into a few fights. I was just your typical lad. Then I also got and I'm not saying any of these things with any sort of pride or boast, but I'm also not saying them ashamed of it either, because it's what led me onto the path to where I am now and the man that I am now. And I got permanently banned from playing Sunday League football from the FA, again for fighting, but with the parents, not the other players, largely with the parents. So I'd go in with a tough shoulder barge or something on one of the players. The dad would start moaning about it. I'd give a bunch of verbals back to the dad, and next thing, me and the dad are rolling down the hill. I'm like 14 years of age and 5 foot. Do you know what I mean? So again, like, who should have known better there, really? The 14-year-old kid with a chip on his shoulder, or the dad, you know? So again, I wasn't innocent by any means, but I was like, who's the one that should have known better there? So I was getting into trouble for sort of fighting and that kind of stuff. So that's what I said to my parents, and can I start boxing? So I asked if I was 10 when I could do it, and my mum was like, oh, my baby's not boxing. So it was fair enough, I didn't do it, but I always had this affinity to combat in general. Loved Bruce Lee growing up. My big brother did karate, but he was an adult, so he was using his wages to do it. My parents couldn't afford to send me. He got me this Thai boxing kit when he went to Thailand. And funny fact that the shorts that he bought me when I was about 7-8 years of age, before my light flyweight fight, still fit me, because I'm that little when I'm you know, my weight, and that has to go so thin that clothes that I had bought for me when I was at primary school, I can still squeeze into, which is crazy. But you know, so I've got that like Thai boxing kit. I had one of those punch bags from Argos that you stand on and you punch on it and it springs back to you. Again, at primary school, I love like WWF wrestling and all that kind of stuff. And then that grew then as I got into senior school into following the boxing and so on. So I loved Chuck Norris as well, and I just loved martial arts and that sort of stuff. So finally, my parents said, yeah, we'll let him go boxing, because he'll probably find out that he's nowhere near as tough as what he thinks he is, give up after a month or so, but at least he scratched that itch. He can't ever blame us for anything then. At least we've let him do it. And 18 years later, I've now got Play-Doh putty for a nose. It's just all squashy, and there's just nothing left in it. So yeah, I just felt like it was something that I needed in my life. And then of course the discipline that I have now from boxing is more stringent than 17 years ago when I started boxing. There are times during like a sparring session you've got a bit hot-headed, or it's got the better review and stuff. But largely the discipline is just something that's bred into you, because you want to box. If you're boxing, you want to box, and if you don't have the discipline, you won't be boxing. So you don't have a choice. You've got, like, we could be in a round and we're punching, and then the bell rings for the end of that round. But if I don't want to listen to the bell and I just keep punching, I'm not going to be getting to fight or spar very often, because no one's going to trust me to stop punching when I need to stop punching. So it's a discipline that's, if you really want to box, is almost forced upon you. And when you hear idiots say, I couldn't do boxing because, I'd lose my rag, I'd end up like kicking them or something. You just got no discipline, and you don't really want to do it. That's the other thing. But yeah, without discipline, we're nothing, are we? Whether it's discipline to go to work, to eat healthy, to exercise just for health benefits, to train for a fight, anything at all, whether it's following rules, abiding by law, we all need discipline. So it's a big thing.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Shaping Champions podcast. Thank you again for listening. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Shaping Champions Podcast. Please do subscribe to us at wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you'd like to discuss anything with us, make any suggestions, or offer up any guests that you'd like us to interview, please do contact us on any of our social channels or email us on shapingchampions@outlook.com. Enjoy the rest of the show. That word gets mentioned a lot, doesn't it? Whenever sort of people discuss boxing. And for the general public, for those who are not kind of involved in the sport, they see two men or women in a ring just absolutely clattering each other. I'm really interested in, what are the things that we don't see in boxing? I mean, you've mentioned discipline there, which is obviously a key sort of characteristic of being involved in the sport. What are the other things that you'd say, Matt?
It's just 99% of stuff that they don't see. I mean, when I also do mentoring with people when they get released from prison, and I deliver boxing sessions. I deliver a whole range of different sporting and physical sessions for them, whatever they want to do, basically. But a lot of them want to do a boxing session with a professional boxer, so I'll take them on the pads and I'll be breaking down little defense techniques and punch combinations and stuff with them, and like, there's more to this than what I thought there was. They're just, setting traps, cutting the ring off, the health and the fitness of it, getting up in the morning. So a boxer has to be semi-good at a vast majority of other sports. So you've got to be a good long distance runner. I run kind of my daily standard is 6 mile, and then I'll do anything then up to sort of a half a marathon type distance, a 13 mile or whatever it is, and I'll occupy anywhere between there. But you've got to be a decent weightlifter for your strength and conditioning. Your sprints also, so not just your distance running. You've got to be a good sprinter and cover a vast period in a short space of time. I think for my last fight, I ran like 5.5 mile in 36 minutes, because that's the time of the fight, 12 rounds. So you've got to be a good sprinter. I do a lot of yoga and that sort of stuff. So again, you've got to be somewhat sort of spiritual or yogic or flexible, or at least have the intention of being flexible. And then it's about your breathing and that sort of stuff. So all these things that we're talking about, and I would have missed bits out that I'm not even thinking of right now. All that I've mentioned, none of that's the boxing stuff. You know, so then you've got your punch combinations and your pad work that you're doing with the coach, the bag work that you're doing, your sparring that you have to do, your nutrition that then comes into it. So you got to be a semi-decent sort of nutritionist and have some form of knowledge of food and know what to eat, when to eat, and that kind of thing. So there's just so much. And somebody in the office at work said to me before about, like, because they got to see, because I'd run into work a lot of the time and then shower and stuff when I got there. And there was a funny time that once we was doing our morning briefing, just seeing who we had on site, risks that we had to manage, and so on and so forth. So we'd do that every day. And they asked the question, and they said, because we do initials, and they said, who's, whatever, MP? And they just heard this little voice from down on the floor go, whatever, oh, it's Michael Palmer. And everyone looked down. I'm just there in the plank position. Just they're like, I forgot you were in it. And I'm just there doing my planks, doing my ab works, but still contributing to the morning briefing at work. And I said, they got to see more than what virtually everybody else in my life gets to witness, for how much training I'm putting in and how hard I'm training and dieting and all the rest of it. And even they still don't see half of it, So it's just constant. You're training morning, you're training nighttime, you're working on the techniques of the punches, of the defense work, of the footwork. There's just so much to it. It's called physical chess boxing. They say it's like physical chess. So for people that know how intricate and how difficult chess is, imagine that physically and getting punched in the face. It's so you can. How long do street fights last for generally? 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. You ever see these videos of street fights and stuff? They don't last very long at all. Right? I'm fighting for 12 3-minute rounds. I've just said 36 minutes. So do you think that you can fight for 36 minutes if you both just stood there just swinging for the fences and you've not put a whole heap of training and effort into it? So there's thought about it. So there was once I was sparring, and this might be quite difficult to just verbally explain, but he had his back to the ropes and he was kind of central to the ring but closer to the left corner than he was the right corner. So I feinted. I thought, I want to get him in that corner. So I feinted, stepped to my right, so there was more space to my left. So naturally, he then stepped to his right, filling in that space. I've then stepped left, so I've cut across him, so I've closed that distance down. I've then feinted again, which made him take a step back. I've stepped right again, which took away his left hand. And then as I've come into punching range, the only punch he could throw there was the big right hand, because the jab would have been like a backhand, flicky, illegal shot. As that backhand's coming, one, I know that's the punch he's going to throw, because it's the only punch he could throw in that instance. Because of where I'm standing, that punch is taking longer to reach the intended target, which is my face. So I've got more time to see it coming. So I managed to slip it, let it go over my right shoulder, boom, left hook into the ribs, sat him on his pants.
It's really fascinating, Matt, to hear you describing what's happening in that moment and the way that you're thinking in what is essentially like a few seconds, isn't it?
He's setting punches up. So if I throw a jab and I notice that he's snatched at my jab to block it or parry it, the next time I'm going to feint my jab so that he snatches and I come round with a left hook. Or if I notice that when I drop a jab to his body, his left hand drops, then the next time I'm going to feint a jab to the body and I'm going to throw a right hand over the top. Or if I throw a jab to the head, I notice his hands are coming up high to protect his head, then I'm going to feint to the head, bring his hands up high and I'm gonna sink and try and put some body shots into his ribs. And so you're always looking at ways that you can kind of trick him, I guess, and make him think that you're going to do something, and then do the opposite instead. Yeah.
It's amazing the intricate detail that goes into it. I mean, you called it a thinking man's sport. What I'm interested in, you described a lot of the, when I asked you about what is it that we don't see in boxing, and you talked about all that physical stuff that no one sees, all the graft, all the hard work, the dedication, the commitment to getting up at those early dark mornings and all that kind of stuff. But what about the mental side of it as well? What's the side of it in that sense that we don't see?
If you're mentally weak at all, you just, boxing is not for you. It's because for as physically strong and fit that you need to be, the mental side is everything. And when it comes to fight week and you're making weight, you know what I mean? I won't even go into like big detail on what fighters need to do, but all people need to do is kind of look on YouTube and whatever to see how some of the UFC fighters make weight and the weight cuts that they make, and they can do their own research and looking into it. But you see people, saunas and wrapping themselves in towels and training the morning of the fight and the night before the weigh-in, and just sweatsuits and just everything that comes with that week. Not drinking, hardly eating, getting the water weight out of you. There's been so many times throughout my boxing career, and I thought, I wish I just tried harder at school. I wish I developed a social media platform or something instead. My life would be a lot more financially successful, and I'd have a much bigger gut. But it's the mental side is everything. It's so brutal. Your body's always sore. With the training and stuff, again, when you spar and you're getting punched, your nose is always sore, or your lips always cut, or your eyes always black, or whatever it might be. And you was doing, lunges and squats and stuff yesterday, and then you're up in the morning to go for a run, and your legs are hurting you. And this is all through camp. And then, of course, you get to fight week, and like I say, you're having to cut your fluids and reduce your portion sizes, and the meals that I eat are very small, and I can go to bed some nights and you hear your stomach rumbling as you go to bed, or you wake up in the morning and your stomach's just like growl. You think, I didn't know I had a dog, and then it's your stomach that's just growling at you instead, and of course when you can't have something, that's all you want. So someone says, don't press the big red button. You just want to press the big red button. So, I mean, I'm a massive foodie. I love my food. But as soon as then you can't have it as well, you crave things that you haven't eaten for the last, if it's been 2 months since your last fight before starting the next camp, as soon as you then officially like back on diet and stuff, you crave things that you haven't even eaten in the last 2 months, that you could have eaten it and you haven't, but now as soon as you can't have it, you want it. So to be in your house, Saturday I always find hard, because if I have a rest day, Saturday is the day that I rest. And if I do something on a Saturday, it's of a morning, and I've got kind of the rest of the day, the afternoon and evening to my own devices. So you kind of sat there, maybe a bit bored, maybe just watching the football or putting a film on or whatever it might be, and your stomach's rumbling, and you just want to sit there sort of snacking. You get into your own head about like, oh, I'm really hungry, I just want to eat stuff, and that kind of thing. So to have the option of going into a shop and buying whatever food that you want to have, and not, you've got to be mentally strong to do that, because we're all in this country very, very privileged that pretty much we can have what we want. You want a chocolate bar, you can go get a chocolate bar. You want some fizzy pop, you can have a fizzy pop. You want to eat in a restaurant, you go eat in a restaurant, generally speaking. So you've got to be mentally strong just to have that restraint say no and to not go to things that you want to go to and to not eat things that you want to eat. But again, come back to what I've already mentioned. That's discipline. That's what discipline is, saying no to because we all overeat. Even if you're in shape, generally we overeat. We all eat more than what we. Why do humans need to eat? We need to eat to keep ourselves alive. Do we only eat, or what we eat, is that specifically to keep us alive, or is it because we like the taste of it? You know, so we eat things because it tastes good. And something that I say a lot to people is people have to be intimate with one another to reproduce and to stop the human population from becoming extinct. But is the only time that humans are intimate to reproduce? Of course not. It's because it's, at least should be, a pleasurable experience for them. And it's the exact same with food. You know, it's a pleasurable experience. So we don't just eat things to keep us alive or eat what we need solely to keep us alive. We eat it because it tastes nice and it's a pleasurable experience. So, it's something that we all overeat, and it's just about then retraining your brain to think, right, I can still actually function on this number of calories or on this food, or by cutting out these foods or whatever, I can still function. And then it's not just a case of, oh, I can still function. It's actually, I think I'm functioning better for cutting out all of these other foods and numbers, E-number, you know, and all that sort of stuff. In fact, I feel better when people come up to me, oh, you're looking really thin. Maybe you could, you know, need to, you know, yeah, oh, are you all right? I feel better most of the time than when people say to me, mate, you're looking really well. Because by that point, I'm chubby. And what they mean is by you looking really well, they mean is you look like the rest of us now. So you make us feel better. That's whereas when I'm really thin and they see me that they feel who didn't need to lose weight to begin with, lose X amount of weight, what it does is it strips away their excuses and it highlights their, you know, their
insecurities.
And failures in the sense of like a disciplined diet and that sort of stuff. So it's like, oh, well, if we just get Matt to look like the rest of us, then it's cool. But if Matt's getting down to 8 stone, 7 stone, 10, and even when I'm just walking around like 8.5 stone when I'm on my diet and that sort of stuff, I can't say, oh, I can't lose X amount of weight because I haven't got the time. Because we've all got the same 24 hours. All of us, I haven't got any more time than anybody else. We've all got the same time, you know. So, yeah, it's discipline. You know, I'll probably circle back to it again at some point before we get to the end. But it's all about discipline.
So, Matt, you're a poet, and a very good one at that. I mean, boxing and poetry, they're not exactly synonymous with one another. So, firstly, like, you know, tell us a little bit about your journey in poetry. And what it is you do, and then if you could give us a flavour as well into whether poetry kind of feeds into your life as a boxer and vice versa.
Absolutely. So one of the best ways I explain when people say, oh, it's, you know, boxing, poetry, it's opposite ends of the scale, and I say for sure, but it's part of the same scale, so they're not two totally different scales. So there might be opposite ends of the scale, but they're opposite ends of the same scale. And you talked about balance and stuff already. Yeah. So that's how I look at it from that aspect. I got into it at the same time I got into boxing, permanently excluded from school. At my pre-school, my pupil referral unit, my teacher, Sue Barnes, said, you've got to write a story or a poem for coursework. Like I don't know, I'm not bothered. You give a 15-year-old a choice of writing, they're really not bothered. And I was like, you know, I don't care. And she was like, well, the story has to be 2 pages and the poem has to be 1 page. I was like, I'll do a poem. I love poems, mate. I can rhyme with words pretty easy. I'll do it, but I know all poetry doesn't have to rhyme. But because the other option was a story, I thought if I was going to do non-rhyming, it would be the story. So if I was going to do a poem, I was going to make it rhyme. So did it. The teacher was impressed with it. next session then she slid the Young Poet Laureate application form in front of me. I couldn't even read the word laureate, didn't know what it meant, what it stood for, nothing. And she was like, I think you should, I saw this and I thought of you, you should enter. We had to write 4 poems and 250 words as to why you'd be a good laureate. So I did that, didn't enter, just sat on it. If you entered yet, not yet, miss. Have you entered yet, not yet, miss. And then it got to the last day and I thought, well, I've done all the work that I need to do for it. I might as well just send off, because if I send off and don't make the final 10, that's a possibility. But if I don't enter it, I definitely won't make the final 10. It's a 100% chance that I will not make the final 10 if I don't send off. So I'll just send off. Got the letter back. I'd made the final 10. So I had to go to the library theatre in town. So I got there. It's very grammar school, middle class girls. And then you've got working class, kicked out of school lad, me, just there representing. I stood up on stage with a shaky piece of paper, and I came runner-up that year, but was hugely inspired by the events and the adults that were involved in hosting it and so on. And then a year later, I kept writing and kept active within the scene as best as I could throughout that year. I was only 15 at the time. Entered a game when it opened again, made the final 10. This time I memorised my poem, took the microphone out the stand, tried to have more stage presence and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, I won that one. That was 2007. So I became the first male in the UK to ever be a Young Poet Laureate. And I think now, that was in 2007, I think now we're in like double figures of lads easy that have gone on and been it. But prior to that, it had only been girls who had that title. So I was kind of doing it for the lads and stuff as well. And people would go, oh, boxing and poetry, that's different. And it's only when people started to say to me that's different that I thought, oh yeah, I guess it is. I never thought, I've always been lucky. I don't know whether it's my upbringing, my parent, I don't know, but I've never really cared what people think. If I wanted to do something, I'd do it. So, to use kind of a boring metaphor, if me and a group of people are walking and I want to turn left and everybody else turns left, I'll still go left. I won't go right for the sake of being different to everybody else, because then I think you just become a pain in the backside. So just being different for the sake of trying to be different. I wasn't that. But if I wanted to go left and every single person that I was with went right, I'd still go left, because that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't doing it to be different. It was just, that's the way that I wanted to go. That's the route that I like the look of, or whatever it was. So I've always just done what I wanted to do. So it was, I guess, a separate thing, but not any, I was at the boxing gym of an evening, and I'd do some poetry or whatever in the day, but I never once thought, oh, I can't be a poet because I'm a boxer, or I can't do boxing because I write poetry. I like both of them. I was okay at both of them. So I was like, I want to do both of them. It was only when people started to make a bit of a thing about, oh, that's different. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I guess it is, yeah. But it never really mattered to me. It's just, I enjoyed it. So now I go into schools, work with young people, because when I was the Young Poet Laureate, of course, I'm the Poet Laureate for young people. So I was booked to be at events where young people were, and then there'd be the Lord Mayor, perhaps the councillor, and they'd give some boring speeches or something, and then I'd come up after them, and it'd make me look really good. And teachers would come up to me afterwards and they go, our students love that and they normally hate poetry. Do you come into schools? So you exchange details, you go into their school, we have a brilliant day. Teachers always know all the teachers at other schools, so they would tell their local schools, oh, we had this poet come in, he's a lad and he's a boxer as well, so it's really good for the hard to reach young lads that are at schools that are failing and all that sort of stuff. So like, you should get him in. So then those surrounding schools would get me in, and then it kind of snowballs, and then the teacher at the one school that you went to moves from a school in Sutton Coldfield and they move down to Gloucester or something, so then they get you into that school in Gloucester, and then they tell their surrounding schools, and it just kind of snowballs. So ever since then, up until this day, and obviously COVID was somewhat difficult, but prior that little lockdown gap, all I've ever done is going into schools, working with young people, providing outlets through predominantly poetry writing. Some schools also commission me or book me to do boxercise sessions, non-contact boxercise, and teach them the discipline of that. Healthy body, healthy mind, which of course I'm big on because so many people now are talking about mental health and the importance of that. And then people also talk about the fact that 1/3 of young people are leaving primary school either overweight or obese, and we know that physical exercise helps our mental health, but they're never really talked about together. They're always still separate, which is why you still to this day have people going, boxing and poetry, that's different, that's unusual, that's strange, don't hear that very often, because we just think sportsmen are dummies in everything else, or sports people are dummies in the other stuff that they do. If you think of sports people, they always make fun of how their voice sounds, or the fact that they're not very intelligent, or because they're sports people. And then on the other side of the fence, when we're talking about mental health, and it's okay not to be okay, and all this the strap lines that people fling out on their social medias and stuff. But I'm a great believer that just sitting, of course there are certain levels, different extremes and all the rest of it, but just sitting inside taking tablets for the rest of your life in a dark room and stuff isn't going to do it for you either. So exercise is a great way to get those endorphins pumping, getting fresh air into your lungs, sunlight into your eyes, and getting out there and combating it. So I'm big on the healthy body, healthy mind thing, and my main message to young people that I work with is just pursue your passions. So I want you to engage in my sessions, I want you to enjoy the sessions, but I don't expect or even want everybody to sprint out of my classroom going, I now want to be a boxing poet. That's not it. But if it helps encourage, it was funny because from 2007, when I first started going into schools, it's been this big thing about breaking stereotypes and just being who you are and what you want to be. So if you're a working class, kicked out of school lad that wants to do poetry, do that. You can break that stereotype. But if you're also a 5'4", 8 stone little lad that wants to box, I'm also kind of breaking the stereotype from that sense. I'm very much living the stereotype in the boxing in the sense of excluded from school, getting into fights like at the football and then that's in the playground and that sort of stuff. So I very much lived a lot of stereotype versions of it as well. So I always used to say, if you're a lad that wants to be a ballet dancer or a girl that wants to be a builder or whatever, then go after it. But what I'm doing now, I find a lot of times, is I'm also reinforcing the acceptance of being the stereotypes, or still encourage the lads that want to be the ballet dancers and the girls that want to be the builders and all that sort of stuff. That's great. I said, but if you're a lad and you want to be a builder, or you're a girl and you want to be a beautician, that's okay too. Like, being the stereotype is all right as well, because everything nowadays is about being different and embracing your weird side and be unique. And there are 8 billion people on this planet, right? And none of them are you. So you pursuing your passion, you living the life that you love to live, that's the most unique thing. Being yourself is the most unique thing that you can be. Even if there are 1 billion other people that are also doing what you're doing, because you're staying true to yourself and you're being who you want to be. So the most unique thing that you can do is just be yourself. And if you're trying to be different, you're trying to be out there, you're trying to wear a certain thing to stand out, but you don't really want to wear that certain thing, but you're just trying to stand, then you're not actually being very unique, because you're not being yourself. So this is the message now that I try and get through to young people, because it's easy then for those that are the footballing lads and the make-uppy girls and that sort of stuff to almost feel ostracized and like they're doing something wrong because they're not against the stereotype, or you know what I mean, that sort of thing. So just say whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, as long as you're not, being hateful or whatever, just pursue your path, whatever it is that you enjoy, whether that's something that isn't the stereotype and it goes against the grain, or whether it's something that very much is the stereotype. If that's what brings you joy, and by it bringing you joy, it doesn't harm anybody else, do it. It's as simple as that. So that's what I do when I go into schools, and hopefully just give some young people a voice. Communication skills, I mean, again, there's so much, I could go on and on. There's so much to it that I do. But communication skills, people talk now about young people not being able to communicate properly and being able to handle their emotions and so on and so forth. So I hate the term role model. I hate being called a role model, but I try and give them a little bit of a positive figure to go, wow, he's like us. Like, if he could do it, I could. I was at a school, Tommy's, so a school very local to me, a few months ago, and his kid, bless him, he'd been like researching me online, and he came up to me at break, and he's like, "So Matt, let me just get this right. You're the Commonwealth Champion." I mean, yeah, that's right. And he said, and as a light flyweight, you're the British and European #1. I went, yeah, that's right. I just can't believe you're at my school working with us. He was like gobsmacked by it. I said, what are you talking about? You're not house. I live down the road. I come running past your school nearly every morning. I'm a morning run. Do you know what I mean? I'm from round the manor. I'm the same as you. And to him, it was like I was, a little somebody, like a somebody. He couldn't believe that I was there, engaging with them and talking to them, and that the school had managed to get me in or whatever. It was like, when I say weird, in the most humbling, beautiful way. But I was like, yeah, I'm very approachable. People can talk to me. I've had people before where they message me and stuff, and when I get back to them, they're like, I can't believe you've replied, or thanks ever so much for replying. I'm like, why would I not reply? Of course I'm going to reply. Do you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. So, just trying to give them the belief and the confidence that they can become whatever it is that they want to become, but also reinforcing the fact that nothing lands in your lap. You're going to have to work hard for it. You're going to have to fail a whole way more bunch of times than what you're ever going to succeed. So be prepared to fail, because in order to succeed, you have to fail. So don't get too embarrassed or too proud about failing. A bunch of the teenage lads kind of say to me somewhat arrogantly, oh, you ever lost a fight? And I go, yeah, I've lost loads of fights. And you see their face sort of drop, because they don't expect you to be so blasé and open about it. So yeah, I've lost loads of fights, but the most important fight of my life I won. So, I've won fights as well, but you don't speak to people at work and go, oh, I've been turned down from a job role. Yeah, obviously. All of us have gone to job interviews and not got the job, or not heard back when you've sent your CV in, or whatever. It happens to all of us, but you just have to keep chugging away. So I talk to them very openly about my failures, my setbacks, and explain every single thing that I've done, from school and education to Young Poet Laureate to amateur titles to professional titles, always came with an initial loss. And I hate it when people go, oh yeah, but you know what, no such thing as losing. Is that there's winning and there's learning. Now, mate, there is such things as losing. Lose all the time. That happens regular. I stop telling our young children that there's no such thing as losing, because there is such thing. Now, yeah, I get what they're saying. I understand the point that they're making, and losses and lessons and all that. So explain to them, teach them that you can learn from the losses, but stop telling them that there's no such thing as losing, because there is. And what happens is then we end up with this society of people that have grown up their whole life being told that they can't lose, and then they don't get into the college or the university that they want to get into, or they don't get the grades that they want, and they're not used to losing, because back at school when they were doing sports day, they came last in the race of 25, but they still got a gold medal. at the end of it, stop them from crying and from feeling bad. So they're not used to it. So then when they can't get the job that they want or the qualify, then all of a sudden, boom, we've got a mental health crisis. I'm not saying that's just solely the only reason for it, but it's a factor for it because we're not used to setbacks and failure because we've been told that we can't lose. So I explained to them very much that you can lose. Not only you can lose, you will lose. You will lose way more times than you ever win, but the victories will far outweigh any failure that you ever have. And as I said, circling back to the initial Commonwealth thing, it will make those losses make sense. Because you go, oh, well, if I would have got that job that I thought at the time I really wanted, I would never have got this job now, and I'm earning more money, or I enjoy it more, or the time's more flexible, or it's only 4 days a week, or whatever it might be. So those losses make it make sense when you get the victory. But the victory only comes if you keep working. If you start feeling sorry for yourself because you lost and you just go, I'm just going to stay in and tell the doctor I'm depressed and not go to work for a few months and be on it and all that, then it's not going to come. So you have to keep working, you have to keep grinding at it, but it will make it all make sense.
It's a fantastic way to wrap up the podcast, and several great points made in that last little piece of the discussion there. Young people being given the opportunity and the chance to kind of understand themselves and know themselves, before trying to be different and before trying to be something that they're not, perhaps.
And I give them the opportunity to get it wrong, because of course at schools, and it's not the teacher's fault, I want to be very clear about that, it's like Ofsted and the powers that be breathing fire down on the teachers. But the schools are so, it's got to be perfect first time, and draw the margin down the left hand side and underline the date and the title and put it on the top left, and everything's got to be so. I'm like, look, I don't care if you're dyslexic, I don't care if your handwriting's messy, I don't care if you struggle to spell a word wrong, try. Because if you try and spell a word correctly, one of two things happen. You'll sound it out phonetically and you'll get it right, or you'll get it wrong, and that's as bad as it gets. The page isn't going to spontaneously combust. We're not going to have to evacuate the building because little Tommy Jones spelt a word wrong. In the greater scheme of things, nobody cares, it doesn't matter. So be relaxed enough, feel free enough to make mistakes, and then as a writer you can go through what every single writer goes through, and that's the editing process. You can edit it, change the spellings and make it better. So I give them the opportunity to make mistakes and let them know that it's okay.
Absolutely. And it strikes me, Matt, that you get so much from boxing and poetry, but that you're giving so much as well, and I think that's fantastic. So just to finish up, one final question: what do you feel are the key characteristics that contribute to shaping a champion?
Characteristics to shaping a champion, I would say vision, focus, determination, resilience, opportunity, luck, bravery, support, tunnel vision, and discipline.
Love it. A fantastic list there. And Matt, where can people find you on social media? And, if they want to look into anything that you're doing?
Insta, Twitter, Facebook, so just Matt Windle, poet. Windle is like swindle without the S. Matt Windle, poet. And like I say, I'm pretty active. So if people want to kind of get in touch with me and just speak or whatever, then I always get back to people.
Absolutely amazing. Matt, it's been a real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thanks ever so much for taking the time out to do this. And likewise, people, please do follow us on all social media platforms, Shaping Champions Podcast. And we look forward to seeing you with the next episode.
We can take our dreams and make them real, yeah. Look to the stars and reach, 'cause you can do